Your name isn't even mentioned." Her voice sliced through the room like a razor. My stepmother sat at the head of the polished oak table as if it had been carved for her alone. Pearls glowed at her throat. A crystal glass trembled just enough to show the thrill she tried to hide. Around us, the lawyer's office breathed a heavy silence. Old leather, paper dust, the slow tick of a clock that sounded like a countdown to my erasure. I went cold. My hands flattened against the table to keep them from shaking. The will, my father's will, was being read, and according to her, I did not exist. My cousins exchanged hungry glances. My uncle pretended to study the brass lamp. Even the lawyer wouldn't look at me. He shuffled the pages like a gambler stalling for luck. "As stated," he said, voice tight, "the majority of the estate, including the family house, goes to Mrs. Evans." The words hit like a door slamming. My throat closed. This couldn't be real. My father, stern, stubborn, obsessively precise, was many things, but cruel was not one of them. He used to put his hand on my shoulder at parties and say, "I'm proud of you." He used to call me his pride. My stepmother smiled with smooth, deliberate grace. Tap, tap, tap. Her manicured nails kept time on the stem of her glass. "See?" she murmured. "It's all quite simple. I'll make sure your things are packed with dignity." She tilted her head, savoring the word. Heat scorched my cheeks. Shame burned, then something darker flared behind it. Suspicion. Father did not forget. He alphabetized his grief. He scheduled his anger. He wrote lists to organize his lists. If I was missing, someone had cut me out. I forced my gaze to the lawyer. He pressed his lips into a thin line. A vein pulsed at his temple. He turned another page too quickly. There. Fear. "Is that everything?" I asked, steady, low. The room looked at me like I'd spoken out of turn in church. "Yes!" my stepmother said too fast, but the lawyer flinched. A cool shiver ran along my spine. Something unsaid hung in the air like smoke. What none of them knew was that 2 nights earlier, I'd stood barefoot in my father's study in the dark. I had opened the drawer he always kept locked. I had felt the ridges of paper against my fingertips. And what I found there would change everything. But to understand why she believed she could erase me, you need to know how this began. My father wasn't just a man, he was a legacy. Robert Evans built his fortune brick by meticulous brick until his name lived on marble plaques, in boardrooms and gala programs, on the tongues of men who measured worth in zeros. Our mansion, with its double staircase and stained glass that caught the morning like a jeweled net, wasn't just a home. It was a monument. I loved him for what he made, yes, but more for the way he looked at me across crowded rooms with a pride that steadied my bones. Then my mother died, and grief hollowed him out. He remarried too quickly, too gratefully. Claudia Evans stepped into our life with perfume like a promise and a smile like a knife wrapped in satin. Even as a teenager, I could smell the storm behind her sweetness. And that storm was already moving across our sky. The Evans estate was more than a mansion. It was a fortress of marble, glass, and history. From the wrought iron gates to the endless hedges trimmed into ruthless symmetry, every detail was designed to impress and to warn. Inside, ancestors stared down from oil portraits with watchful, unsmiling eyes. I grew up beneath their gaze, learning how to make myself small enough to survive their judgment. When I was little, Father used to scoop me up at the foot of the stairs and whisper, "One day, all this will be yours." I believed him because back then his promises had weight. We'd stand on the balcony at dusk, the city glittering like spilled diamonds, and he'd point and say, "That light belongs to us. Someday you'll carry it." The night my mother died, something inside him shattered. Laughter drained from the halls. Doors stayed shut. Meals went cold and silent. Grief made him soft where he used to be unbreakable. And into that softness stepped Claudia. She arrived like scent filling a room, sweet, intoxicating, impossible to ignore. Black silk and red lips, perfect posture, a smile polished to a weapon. She spoke softly to Father, and he leaned toward her as if heat gathered where she stood. I wanted to believe her kindness, but her compliments had edges. "You're pretty," she'd say, "but you'd be stunning if you learned to carry yourself." The words hovered between advice and insult and always landed on the latter. Traditions disappeared the way snow melts, slowly, then all at once. Our Christmas tree, once strung with lights by our clumsy hands, was now erected by professionals. "It will photograph better," she said, and Father nodded as if photographs could hug you. The library, my sanctuary, became a room I tiptoed through. The study, once our fortress of secrets, became her office. The staff changed. Old faces who whispered memories vanished, replaced by silent, efficient strangers who took orders only from her. One night I came down to the fireplace and found her murmuring with my uncle, laughter slipping through their teeth like smoke. Her hand rested on his sleeve with elegant familiarity. When she saw me, her smile turned bland and warning. That was the first time I understood she wasn't just settling in, she was colonizing. Father changed in increments so small you'd miss them if you weren't watching as hard as I was. He spent more hours locked in meetings, more evenings nodding at Claudia's suggestions. He still loved me, he said so, but I could feel his attention being managed. Grief had made him needful. Claudia made herself necessary. Necessity is power. Then came the stormy night that branded itself into my memory. Rain clawed at the stained glass. As I passed her door, I heard her voice on the phone, low and blade sharp. "Once it's signed, she's out of the picture for good." The words stopped my heart. The door creaked. The call ended. When I stepped inside, Claudia smiled, soft as velvet. "Couldn't sleep, dear?" My pulse hammered so hard it hurt. I mumbled something and fled, the echo of her sentence following me down the hall like a curse. Lying in the dark, I understood. She wasn't simply here to share our life. She was here to rewrite it, line by line, until mine disappeared. Her plan was already in motion. I just hadn't seen how deep the roots went. If Chapter 1 was shadow, Chapter 2 was fire. The grand hall shimmered with chandeliers and crystal. Silver cutlery lined up like soldiers. From the outside, the evening looked like wealth performing itself. Centerpieces of white peonies, decanters breathing expensive wine, a string quartet tucked into the corner. Inside, tension throbbed like a second heartbeat. Claudia sat in Father's chair. Not beside him, in it. Emerald silk gleamed at her shoulders. The emerald on her finger flashed when she lifted her glass. Father stared into his wine as if searching for answers no one would let him speak. I was 3 seats down, flanked by cousins who fed on cruelty. Marcus leaned close, bourbon on his breath. "Didn't you hear?" he stage whispered. "Your father's legacy is spoken for. You don't matter." A soft ripple of laughter traveled the table. Caroline hid a smirk behind her napkin. "Be nice, Marcus. She still thinks she's family." Claudia didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Humiliation outsourced is humiliation amplified. "That's not true," I managed. "My father would never—" "Never what?" Marcus lifted his glass. "Never love her more than you? Face it, you're an afterthought." Laughter, bright, brittle, merciless, broke like glass. Father's fork tapped his plate. He didn't speak. His silence cut deeper than their mockery. Silence can be violence. His was a blade. I ate nothing. The music dissolved into static. As soon as I could, I slipped away to the library. Cedar and ink and old paper steadied me. I traced the spines he once read aloud, remembering his voice, the way it warmed the room. "Enjoying your nostalgia?" Claudia's silhouette carved the doorway. She stepped in, heels ticking on marble. "You don't belong here," she whispered. "This house, this family, it's mine now. The sooner you accept that, the less it will hurt." The words wrapped around my ribs like wire. I pressed my forehead to the bookshelves after she left and made myself a promise. I would not vanish quietly. If she wanted me erased, she'd have to do it with the lights on. Still, I couldn't escape the certainty taking shape. She was building something permanent, a future without me. The worst betrayal, the one that would rip through everything I loved, was waiting just out of sight. The will reading should have been an ending. Instead, it opened a door. Mr. Callahan, my father's lawyer, smelled faintly of cologne and panic. His hands trembled as he turned the pages. Claudia's poise was weaponized elegance, pinned hair, flawless nails, a brooch that glittered like a small crown. She looked less like a widow than a monarch accepting tribute. The majority of the estate, including the family home, passes to Mrs. Evans, he recited. Remaining assets are distributed among her designated heirs. And me? I asked. He swallowed. Your father made no mention of you. The sentence collapsed the floor under my feet. Claudia breathed out, a satisfied, almost sexual relief. But something was off. Callahan rushed past one page. A vein pulsed. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Is that everything? I kept my voice steady, thin steel under velvet. Yes, Claudia answered for him, too fast. That night I crept into Father's study. The mansion slept like a beast between breaths. The drawer he kept locked slid open beneath my fingers with a pulse of terror and memory. Inside, receipts, letters, notes in his hand, and an envelope stamped confidential. My hand shook so hard I had to press the edges of the desk into my palms before I could open it. Inside lay a draft of his will, earlier, annotated, alive with his handwriting. My name wasn't missing, it was everywhere. The house, the shares, the foundation, the language read like a vow. He intended to leave it all to me. Air rushed back into my lungs so fast I swayed. He hadn't abandoned me. So who had? Who had cut me out of the final version? Who had taken a pen to my future? I confronted Callahan the next morning. Without Claudia, he seemed smaller. I dropped the draft on his desk. Explain. He closed the office door with a shaky hand. Your father suspected betrayal, he whispered. He prepared additional documents. But when the time came, his voice broke. They were gone. Gone? Taken, he said. I don't know by whom. He did know who could. Fear shone from his eyes like sweat. If I release anything, I could lose everything. My pulse banged in my ears. Then you've already lost your integrity, I said. Help me find the truth. He looked at me for a long beat, then nodded a fraction. If you're still with me, I said, leaning in, stay until the end. The truth will shock you. That night in bed, I held the draft like a relic. My father had protected me in ink. Someone else had tried to burn me out of the story. Somewhere, the hidden will waited like a buried fuse. And someone inside our house knew exactly where it was. The mansion turned into a battlefield. Claudia cornered me in hallways, the sweet stink of her perfume smothering my breath. It's pathetic, she murmured once, clinging to things that don't belong to you. Her eyes glittered. Pack. I didn't scream, I searched. I carved through drawers, safes, hidden panels. In the library safe, I found a broken seal. In Father's desk, a torn envelope. In a locked cabinet, smudged signatures as if someone had tried to erase a past and write a different future. Fragments, proof of tampering, not enough to win. Then Claudia summoned everyone to the drawing room. She sat like a queen in her armchair, legs crossed, silk a pool around her. My uncle stood behind her like muscle borrowed for the day. My cousins arranged themselves for the show. Callahan hovered, eyes on the floor. Enough, Claudia announced. She's spreading lies, poisoning Robert's memory with fantasies. That's not true. I pulled the draft from my coat and held it up. This is his intention. He wrote my name. You buried it. Chaos exploded. Forgery? My uncle shouted. Caroline laughed. Marcus smirked. Claudia's eyes went black. No one will believe you over me, she hissed. Over his widow. They'll believe handwriting, I said, and a pattern of theft. Her mask cracked, just a hairline, then settled. A man I hadn't noticed, her brother, heavy with quiet menace, stepped forward. Drop it, he said softly, or we'll break you. A vase toppled in the shouting that followed, shattering into 1,000 glittering pieces. Callahan opened his mouth to speak. Claudia's brother murmured something about photos and ruin, and the lawyer closed his mouth like a trap. I felt the room tilting, the air thinning. My father's portrait glowered from above the mantel as if demanding courage. My chest ached with the weight of almost losing everything. And then the door opened. The probate judge stepped in, robe whispering over marble, face unreadable. In his hand, a leather-bound folder, edges worn, clasp intact. The room froze as he set it on the table. Claudia's knuckles went white. My cousins went silent. Even her brother stepped back. The judge looked at me. "Ms. Evans," he said, voice even. His hand hovered over the clasp. "And then," I whispered, unable to breathe, the judge reached for the hidden folder. Whatever truth it held would either destroy me or save me. The click of the clasp echoed like a gunshot. The judge opened the folder. Yellowed pages, bold signature. The slant of my father's hand I could recognize in a dark room with my eyes half closed. "This," the judge said, "is an earlier testament. Verified, witnessed. It supersedes the contested document." A current of whispers sparked around the room. Claudia's composure fractured. She lurched to her feet. "Fake!" she shouted. "She planted this." "Handwriting experts have confirmed the authenticity," the judge replied, unperturbed. "This is Robert Evans's will." Color drained from Claudia's face. Marcus and Caroline stared, stunned birds after a window strike. My uncle slumped into a chair, cursing under his breath. Callahan exhaled so softly I might have imagined it. I stepped forward, palms buzzing. "My father didn't forget me," I said. "You tried to erase me." Claudia's voice cracked. "You don't deserve any of it. I kept this family alive." "No," my voice cut clean. "You consumed it." Behind me, the lawyer spoke, finally confirming chain of custody, referencing dates, notarizations, the court filings already in motion. Words like probate, primary testament, fraud, tampering filled the space like nails sealing a coffin. Claudia lunged for the folder. The judge's gavel slammed down. "Enough." His tone went to granite. "The court recognizes this as the valid will. The estate passes to the rightful heir, his daughter." The sentence detonated inside me. Vindication flooded my limbs. I could feel my father's hand on my shoulder across time. "One day, all this will be yours." Claudia sagged into her chair, wrecked. Her empire crumbled in the open air. No dramatic flames, just the sickening inevitability of gravity. My cousins stared at me with a new expression. Fear. My uncle looked at the floor. Callahan's shoulders loosened as if a weight slid off his spine. The judge closed the folder and held it out. "Guard it well," he said. "Justice moves slowly, but it moves." The leather felt warm in my hands, heavy, holy. Not just paper, proof, not just inheritance, justice. The fortune, the house, the foundation, mine. Not because of greed, but because truth finally had its day in court. "Pack," Claudia had told me. I smiled, small and sharp. "You first." The room stayed silent long after the judge left. It wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was the silence that follows an exposed lie. I straightened, folder clutched to my chest. The portraits on the wall seemed to lean closer. For the first time, I didn't feel their judgment. I felt their acknowledgement. I looked straight at Claudia, her mask shattered, and delivered the only sentence she deserved. "You tried to erase me, but I am still here." The humiliation on her face was my justice. Her silence was my inheritance. If this shocked you, hit the like button, because the truth, no matter how buried, always claws its way to light. Justice landed, but scars don't vanish with a gavel. In the days that followed, the mansion exhaled. Light flowed through tall windows like something set free. Footsteps sounded different on the marble, no longer the click of a conqueror's heels, but the steady measure of someone rebuilding. Staff who had kept their eyes down now met my gaze. Relief softened faces I'd only seen arranged in careful neutrality. Fear takes root in walls. So does relief. You can feel the difference when it changes. Claudia shrank. Without the illusion of power, she moved like a shadow untethered from its source. No throne at the head of the table, no eyes tracking her for permission. She paced the halls as if trying to invent a reason to remain. The woman who tried to erase me faded into the margins she had once written for others. My cousins scattered to their own small dramas. The laughter they weaponized died in their throats when the inheritance evaporated. My uncle vanished in a flurry of excuses. Wealth built on theft is sand. The tide did what it always does. Callahan came to see me with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. He offered an envelope with my father's writing on the front. He asked me to give you this when the truth stood up. His voice cracked around the word truth. Inside a letter. My dearest, if you're reading this, it means you walked through fire. I wanted to protect you in life. I made plans to protect you beyond it. This was never about money. It was about trust, about making sure that what I built could not be stolen by love turned to appetite. Remember, a legacy is not a pile of bricks. It's a promise. And you are the promise I trust. Tears came hot and clean. For months I'd wondered if his silence at that cruel dinner meant consent. The letter answered the question I hadn't said aloud. No, he had seen. He had planned. He had left me a map through the dark. I walked the estate differently after that. The library became mine again. Fire crackling, pages turning, silence that comforted instead of accusing. On the balcony, where he once told me the city lights belonged to us, I learned to see them as responsibility instead of proof of worth. In the garden, the roses he planted with my mother bloomed wildly, as if relieved. Grief stayed. Grief always stays, but it lost its teeth. Claudia tried to rally. She sent letters through lawyers with words like contest and appeal. She fed rumors to society pages that painted her as a saint undone by a scheming stepdaughter. But documents are stubborn. Signatures don't bend to gossip. The court filings exposed what needed exposing. The more she fought, the smaller she looked. Betrayal turns great beauties into cautionary tales. Sometimes I saw her standing by the fountain, staring at her reflection as if waiting for the woman she used to be to climb out and save her. She had been so certain money could buy legacy, that performance could buy love. But inheritance without truth rots from the inside. The city learned the story in drips, court updates, whispered parties, a headline that used the word exposed. Invitations stopped arriving for her. Rooms that once opened for her eyes now avoided them. She'd taught me what erasure felt like. The world handed her a mirror. One evening I stood in Father's study with the leather folder on the desk and the letter beside it. We did it, I said to the empty room. The words felt like a prayer and a goodbye. For the first time, the ache in my chest eased into something like gratitude. Love is complicated. Legacy is heavy. Both outlast death if they're tended. Inheritances can divide families, I whispered, but the truth always comes to light. I closed loops that had kept me awake. The hidden draft, the missing will, the blackmail that muzzled a cowardly lawyer. Justice isn't neat. It leaves fingerprints. One wound stayed open. My father's silence at that dinner when I needed him to speak. I accept that I'll never know why he stayed quiet. Maybe grief, maybe strategy, maybe the cost of being the man the world needed him to be. That scar is mine to carry. I look at the wealth now and I don't see a prize. I see a trust. One I owe to the girl at the library window, to the man who wrote me into his final words, to the future I refuse to let greed define. The foundation will fund scholarships for daughters told they don't belong. The business will honor contracts like vows. The house will be a home, not a stage. What would you do if your stepmother erased your name from the will? Because money fades, houses crumble, empires fall. But betrayal leaves scars no inheritance can heal. And scars, when they're told honestly, become maps for anyone walking the same dark road toward justice. If this story shook you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. More unbelievable inheritance stories are coming, and you won't want to miss them.